Uh, Namaskar, good afternoon. Welcome to
Namaste.
the Bhava Samvad of Kalinga Literary Festival. This is a platform where we are talking about a variety of subjects, on variety of themes, on variety of uh, directions, and we are talking to people. But in the history of Kalinga Literary Festival, uh, today shall be one of the most important and historic moment because we are going to join with one of the living legend of our time who had seen freedom, who had seen making up India, and who is also witnessing on making up India. She is none other than Nayantara Sahgal. Welcome, madam. It's a great honor to have a legend like you to this platform. People for new generation, Nayantara Sahgal is a name. She is one of the finest creative persons of our time, one of the finest creative minds, one of the greatest novelists, one of the great political historian, commentator, and above all, one of the finest guardians of our conscience, our collective conscience. She is one of the greatest defenders of democracy in this country. It's a great opportunity to welcome you here, ma'am. Thank you very much for your time, uh, and I welcome you to this platform.
Thank you so much, Kedar.
Uh, before, yes, ma'am, please. Before coming to this interview, I was watching an interview of your mother. One of that time, a journalist was asking Madam Vijayalakshmi Pandit uh, how you are going to see the future of this country. And Madam Pandit was a kind of prophetic. She told the journalist that the future of India looks bleak, but the foundation of our democracy and freedom is so strong that we may come out from this darkness. On that, against that backdrop, I am going to ask you the same question. How do you see the future of this country? Because we are all everyone is in a very troubled and trying time. There is a pandemic, there is economic depression, there is political turmoils. So, in a time like this, how do you see the future of democracy, future of this country?
Well, I think, Kedar, I think that the future may never come because apart from the pandemic, apart from the economic difficulties that have arisen, there has been an ongoing assault on democracy. And today we see it getting worse and worse. We see people thrown into jail for no reason. And we have seen writers and artists killed, common people lynched. Well, these are not good signs for a democracy. Well, we can always say we shall overcome, and there are thousands, millions in this country like myself who are opposing these assaults. But to predict when or how we would come out of it, I'm not able to do that.
But you have seen the darkest phase of our democracy in the form of emergency, and at that
Yes,
time you were one of the staunchest critic of emergency, and we overcome emergency. So how don't you see that we have that strength, that foundational strength within us, and we can overcome this phase also?
But you see, Kedar, today it is the foundation of India itself which is being destroyed. At the time of the emergency, Indira Gandhi was, by training, upbringing, basically a Democrat. So she did finally call an election. She had gone very, very wrong, but she did call an election. And that election proved the strength of the people of India. It proved the wish and the hope that our founding fathers had when they gave universal suffrage to this country at independence. It was the people of India that brought down Indira Gandhi's dictatorship. Today, we can't rely on the vote. We can't rely on our institutions which were founded to protect our constitutional rights, because it is those very things which are under attack and which are being weakened. And therefore, I have to admit that I am not optimistic, but the fight has to go on.
When we say that we are not optimistic, and I share your concern, but that's why they say that we are prophets of dooms. We are the people who are not supporting an elected government. So they have come through due election, they have come through due electoral process, and they believe that they have the mandate to rule, and they have the mandate to impose the ideas and ideologies that they're preaching.
That is very true, and that is exactly what happened in Germany when Hitler came to power through an election. And then, of course, well, we all know our history, we all know what happened in Germany, and it took the Second World War to unseat Hitler, to end that fascist dictatorship that he had founded. So an election does not always bring to power a person who is going to believe in democracy or defend it.
So don't you see what is the way out actually? How do we fight this assault, or how do we go from here actually? Is it the last, is it the full stop? From here, do you think it's the blind spot? There is no light in future?
No, there is no full stop, Kedar. We must fight, and that is what we are doing. I
Okay.
am a child of Gandhi's India. I was brought up to believe in non-violence, and the entire national movement for freedom, which was led by Mahatma Gandhi, did it on the basis of non-violence. It was an incredible event, really, and that is how we must proceed, non-violently, and continue to protest as we are doing, as is happening. It is the only way. And it is happening in India, not in one single organized uprising of any kind, but in many different areas of the country by different groups and organizations and individuals who are all speaking out. You have heard them. We have all heard them. That
But
is how we
yes,
have to fight.
uh, when you're talking about Gandhi, you have seen the freedom struggle. At that time, you were a student, you were in your school and colleges, and you
Well,
have seen. Can you just talk about a little bit about your association with Gandhiji? Because your mother was very close to Gandhiji, and your uncle, we know, the maker of modern India. So you are coming from a family which contributed to the freedom of this country, and that's that's the history. And everyone in this ruling regime, they are attacking that very family value, that Nehru is one of the softest target for the ruling class now. Why Nehru is the only target for them, ideologically and politically?
Well, what exactly is your question? Is why is Nehru the target?
Yeah, why Nehru is the prime target? They are not
Because,
targeting. They are not targeting even Mrs. Gandhi.
because
If you look into their discourse, they are not attacking Mrs. Gandhi. Rather, they are attacking more on Nehru, the
why would
Nehruvian policy, Nehru.
why would they attack Mrs. Gandhi? They are following in her footsteps. But Pandit Nehru was the first Indian Prime Minister, and he led this country for the first 17 years of independence. And so he is the target. And of course, he is the target also because, as one of the founding fathers, he laid the foundation for our constitutional rights, our secularism, the belief that this country, which is more than a country, it is a civilization, has cherished its diversity. It has been enriched by its different cultural streams, its different religious streams, and all the different racial aspects, different from each other, which have poured into it and made us today what we are. That is the meaning of secularism. Also, it means that the state should not interfere in religion because religion is every person's private affair. So these are not concepts which appeal to the present regime because, as we know, they want to convert India into a religious identity and into a Hindu Rashtra. So, of course, Nehru is their target, like Gandhi was their target, and that is why he was killed.
Yeah, Gandhi was killed at that time, but now slowly they are trying to co-opt Gandhi in their ideological fold. But let's not go into the. Yeah, ma'am, please.
Uh,
I just.
they are trying to, you see, they cannot do without Gandhi. This country cannot forget Gandhi. Therefore, they keep his name before them and so on, just as they now say that Sardar Patel was a great man and Ambedkar was a great man. These were people whom they opposed and loathed at the time of the freedom struggle. So they can say anything they like. What we are seeing is something different. They say one thing and do something quite different. So, I mean,
Okay.
any intelligent person knows that they want to crush the last vestige of the great civilization that we are. I want to tell you that all my novels, and I think I've written about 12 of them by now, have been about the making of modern India, about these
Yes, yes.
ideals upon which India was based. But the last two novels I wrote were based upon the unmaking of modern India, because those are the times we are living in now.
Can you just little bit elaborate that this unmaking process, that okay, we are going into a little bit, we are tilting towards right, we are tilting towards so-called Hindu Rashtra, and we are destroying our well-established institutions, but still we are saying that we are one of the largest democracy of the world, we are the largest democracy of the world. So
Well,
our
I'm not,
prime minister.
I am not saying that. I am saying we are not a democracy anymore. They are
Okay.
saying we are the largest democracy. We, who see what they are doing, are saying that it is a dying democracy we are today a dying republic which is being deliberately killed by those who wish to destroy our great heritage of the past.
So, when they are trying to deliberately kill the democracy, why there is no opposition? Why there is no public outcry? Why
There
people
is
of this country are so dormant?
no, Kedar, there is a huge outcry in many different areas of the country by many different organizations, by many different individuals. That is going on. And the last great non-violent protest we saw was the Shaheen Bagh movement. So we cannot say there has been no outcry. There has been no single outcry. That is true. Because there is
Yeah.
no Gandhi alive today to rally all Indians under one banner. That's my regret. But otherwise, there has been a huge amount of protest and outcry. And it is going on. Why am I talking to you like this?
Yeah, yeah.
Why are you
No, no,
asking me these questions? Because
yeah,
I'm one of the people who will not accept that our republic will be killed in this way.
Uh, you know, actually I was asking about the political opposition. You must be remembering when emergency was declared. It was JP who led a huge protest. It was your mother who joined them ideologically. It was you who gave a strong support to the movement against Congress Party and against Mrs. Gandhi, despite she is being your cousin. But why we miss that kind of political opposition nowadays? We have hardly any political party or political opposition who are really coming on the street uh, to protest.
No, you're right. We have no leader of stature. We don't have a Gandhi, but we don't have any leader of stature today who will rally the people of India. That's a great tragedy. But then we have to do without a leader. We have to continue our opposition to injustice, to wrongdoing, to cruelty, to all the things that are going on. We have to continue that.
Yep, and what pains me that cruelty is being branded as as a virtue. Actually, everybody is enjoying the cruelty, and the media. You must have seen how media is behaving. Suppose when we started the protest, and I must thank you that because you are the pioneer of this award of sea movement, and all of a sudden media started coining a phrase called award wapsi gang. And the media looks really scary, not only the political parties or the political system. It's a media which is really free. So how do you see media today and media during Mrs. Gandhi? Do they have any similarities, or it's more dangerous now?
In every dictatorship, we see this happening. But here, let me remind you, Kedar, that since this regime came to power, the very first thing it did was to capture all our premier institutions, uh, whether it was the IITs or the academies or whatever. We had Nehru's governments had established great institutions. What is our space achievements have come about because of the institution established at independence. So those were all established. And the first thing that was done was to take those over and replace the people at the head of them by those chosen by the regime. That was done first thing, very methodically and very, very quickly. So from that time, the takeover has been going on. Now, you yourself know, we all know what has happened to justice. It
Yes.
breaks my heart, to say this because that was our last resort. The vote was our last resort, but ultimately, the justice in India was our very last resort, you know, to to be able to run a democracy as it should be run. We don't have those strengths, those pillars of democracy today to rely on. And
Yeah,
that's
that's a
a great tragedy. And when you talk of the media, I hardly can look at the news because, well, I think three-quarters of the media has been bought over. And there are maybe one or two or three channels which we can still rely on. And we don't know how long they will last because cases have been brought against them.
now
So,
it's becoming. Yes, ma'am, please.
no, no, you're talking the media. So I say that, what is the role of the media today? It is not the great tradition which the media enjoyed in our democracy. To quarrel, to argue, to disagree, to debate, to put on programs which showed uh, the news and not what the regime wanted us to know. So there you have my opinion of the media.
Did you ever imagine that in this country someone will come, a journalist will come and say you that you are a part of our Wapsi gang? Did you ever imagine that a day will
No,
come,
no,
a simple
no.
protest?
I never imagined such a thing could happen in India. Never.
So now let's go to some other part of your life actually, because you know your life is full of history, because you always registered to say that I think I somebody asked you that you are a part of Nehru Gandhi family, and you said that no, I am a I'm a part of Nehru family. I had nothing to do with Gandhi family. So
No,
being a
no,
part of.
that was not my reply, Kedar.
Yes,
Let
ma'am,
me
please.
let me correct this, if you will permit me. I am not a Nehru, and I am not one of Firoz Gandhi's family. I
Oh
belong to the
yes.
Pandit family. I am the daughter of Ranjit Sitaram Pandit, not of any Gandhi, not of any Nehru. And
Okay.
and my father was one of the greatest human beings I have known. He gave his life for the freedom of this country. He was 4 times in jail and he died of his last
Inside.
imprisonment soon, shortly before independence. He didn't live to see it. So let me make it clear I am of the Pandit family. I am half Kashmiri and I am half Maharashtrian. I'm very proud of my Maharashtrian heritage. They were great
And
scholars. My father was a
yes,
great
ma'am.
Sanskrit scholar, apart from being a great linguist and many other things which I won't enumerate just now. But the
Yeah,
point is, he gave it all up to die for this country, to live and die.
yes.
That is what Mahatma Gandhi inspired in this country, which as a child I saw all around me when I was growing up. Can I accept a regime like this?
No, certainly not. But I just wanted to ask about your father and your mother, and I read your father's translation of Rajatarangini, and that's a fabulous translation. Actually, one of the greatest translations I have ever gone through. And then coming to your mother, who struggled to reclaim her right to property. And now when Supreme Court said that girl child, the daughters have the equal rights in the property of fathers, but your mother had to struggle to reclaim the property of her husband. That
She
struggle,
never
can you
could.
please?
Yes, let me tell you that the Hindu woman had no, Hindu
Yes.
widow, woman also, but Hindu widow had no rights at all before the Hindu Code Bill, which was a great achievement of the Nehru governments. Until then, the woman had no rights at all
No
in
rights.
Hindu. And my mother certainly could never reclaim anything of my father's because she was alone. Her brother was in jail. Her husband had died. It was a terrible time. It was
Oh, oh,
a
oh.
very, very difficult time for her. And I admire the stoicism and courage with which she went through it, and in which she had the help of Mahatma Gandhi, who was not only the political guru of my family, he was also a friend and a mentor. He also was in jail at that time and couldn't help her. But when he was released from Pune and he came to Juhu with his entourage at that time, and he wrote to my mother, "Come and join me." And she went from Allahabad to Bombay, as it was then, and spent, I forget now, maybe a week or two there with him. And she said it restored her, revived her and restored her. This is what Gandhi did. And he also said to her, give up any case which you are planning against your brother in law, forget it. Keep the goodwill of your husband's family. And she also knew how dearly my father had loved his family. And so she gave up everything for that and kept the goodwill and affection of her brother's family, the nephews and nieces, and my Pratap Kaka, as I called him, my father's brother. So that is Gandhi, and that is what he did for the people who came to him in distress, at least in my family.
Okay. After independence, your mother, before independence, actually, your mother was in Russia, then Soviet Russia as ambassador. Then she went to UN. So, in this, in a very frequently traveled life, how did you plan your own life, and how did you start your creative writing? That when did you decide that you are going to be a writer? Because you did not when at that you that was a very troubled and very unstable time for uh, uh, your
Yes,
youth.
yes.
Your youth. It was US, it was Soviet Russia, it was India. I think a part of your time also you spent in London.
No, it was a very difficult time for me. You see, I had just finished college when independence came. Just finished, just graduated. And I was abroad in America. And I came home in October 1947, just soon
Okay.
after independence. My mother had already been sent to Moscow as our first ambassador.
Yes.
So she was not there. My father was dead from his last imprisonment. My home, which was Anand Bhavan, Allahabad, my uncle's home where we were all brought up, that was closed and locked because he had come to Delhi as prime minister. And the burdens of India were on his shoulders and on his government's shoulders at the time because, well, everybody knows the horrors of the partition, what Indians went through on both sides of the border. It was the worst time that had ever happened until then. And I was quite lost as a young girl, uh, neither my mother nor father there. And my uncle, whom I adored, I had always considered him my third parent. He had so much to deal with, including the Hamla on Kashmir, the invasion of
Oh,
Kashmir
yes.
at that time. So it was a terrible, terrible time. Well, one lives through these times. And I never decided to become a writer. But what I did do was write a kind of memoir about the times I had grown up in, to show the kind of India that I had grown up in, the ideals of that time, and how the people of India behaved at that time. And I called it Prison and Chocolate Cake. That was my
Yes.
first book.
First book,
And
yes.
mind you, if I were to write that book again today, it would be a very different book, showing the grim side of those years of my growing up. But instead, I showed the great side, the way that my parents, my family, and the people of India responded at that time to Gandhi's call. I made it a much sort of less unhappy story than it would have been otherwise. But yes, I grew up with greatness, and I have always needed idealism in my life. It's like oxygen to me. Oxygen is air. We can't breathe without it. No? And I can't
Right.
live without without
Idealism.
work, without doing the right thing.
Okay. But let me ask you another question. But the same thing. To decide to be a writer in a family where you have Pandit Nehru, who is one of the greatest writers of the world, and your mother is also, because I read her autobiography, and she had a great understanding of literature. Your father was also a literary person. So from all those luminaries, uh, do you ever believe that how to become a writer of your own, going away of these banyan trees, or do they have any influence, or you wanted to write on your own?
You see, that was a time of letter writing. It was a time when people wrote letters.
Oh, yes, yes, that's a
Now,
very
of course,
fascinating thing. Yeah.
now it's all communication on the mobile, where that is not the same thing, obviously. But we were in the family all letter writers because that is what people did at the time. And because we were separated time and again from the parents. I had two sisters, and the three of us were often left alone because the parents were in jail or in some other part of the country working for the Congress. So letter writing was the way to communicate and to be together. And in fact, I have wonderful letters from Mamu, my uncle, written from jail, wonderful letters from my parents written from jail. And my uncle, in fact, he was at heart an educator. He used to write, look on that shelf in the library and you will find such and such a book. I'm sure it will interest you. He led me to books. It was amazing. And the letter writing between us was not only the way to communicate with each other, but it was a bond at a time when we could not be together. I never decided to be a writer. For many years, though I had by that time written 2 or 3 books, I still didn't think of myself as a writer. I just thought, acha ye bhi ho gaya, aage pata nahi kya hoga. I never thought I'd be a writer, never. But my books got accepted one after the other, and there was no publishing to speak of in India at that time. All Indian enterprise, as you know, was suppressed to make room for British whatever
Authors.
it might be. Yes, and not only, but in every regard. I mean, no business was allowed to grow. No Indian could rise above colonel in the army, and so on. We were uh, second-class citizens in our own country. So, but my books, because they came out at a time when the world's eyes were on India at that time. What is going to happen now? How is this country going to behave now as an independent nation? And so on. So my books were accepted one after the other. I had no problem getting published. And as you know, a writer's greatest reward is readers. You know,
Yes,
we don't want
yes,
anything else.
yes.
We want to be read. So I was read. And I consider myself very fortunate that my work could be projected in that way at that time, and then continued to be after that.
Uh, you also, I think you have compiled many of your letters in a book called Relationships. Then you also compiled and edited letters written by Pandit Nehru to your mother. So, how you see the value of those letters? When letters has become completely an archival things now. Actually, nobody is in the day of this modern day technologies, the texting, chat messages. In these days, it's completely archival. So, how do you see those letters from this time actually, because you have witnessed the time of later, and you are also witnessing the time of this new technology actually. What is the relevance of those letters in these days?
No, I'm very glad that they were written because, as we can see, letter writing is something now vanishing into the past. So I'm glad they are there.
Okay. Okay, let's come to the other side. When did you start writing columns actually? Uh, there was a
Yeah.
time your columns in Indian Express, it was a regular things, and you were a staunch critic of your cousin, Mrs. Gandhi. So how
Yeah.
did it start? How did it come to you actually?
You see, although I am not in politics, I have never been in politics and I have never wanted to be in politics. Though at one time, President Radhakrishnan, who was also a personal friend of my mother's and family, he wanted me to come into politics. He wanted me to stand for election to the Lok Sabha. I was not even of age at that time, but he said that she should enter politics. I had no such desire, never. And what I what I uh, what I felt I had to do was uphold the traditions that I had been brought up with, and which Indians had been brought up with since independence, of democracy. And when I saw that my cousin Indira Gandhi, to whom I was devoted, and she was devoted to me, I was her favorite young cousin. There was a 10 years difference between us, but we were very close. But I had to go against her because she was not doing the right thing. She was destroying all that India had stood for. I have been opposing dynastic succession since before you were born, I'm sure. When
Yeah,
Mrs. started to promote Sanjay as her successor, from that time, I have been opposing these kind of developments which were and still have been at the heart of weakening the Congress party. So my role was then to oppose it as a writer. And yes, I was writing fairly regularly for the Indian Express and also for other papers. Ultimately, JP sent me a message, please write for my Everyman's Weekly. So I accepted that and I said to JP, I'll do it for love. And he said, no, 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 I will pay you, which was 250 rupees for an article in those days.
Okay.
One didn't make money by writing for the press in those days. I was not a journalist even. I was just a commentator, political commentator who wrote articles. So I also wrote for Everyman's Weekly and went to Bihar a number of times to write about the Bihar movement at that time. And
But
that
yeah, please.
And people said to me at that time, how can you go against your family? And I said, I am defending what my family stands for, what Nehru stood for. That was my answer. I was not going against, she was going against.
But what was the reaction of Mrs. Gandhi? As you told that you were very close to each other, but when you started opposing and writing against her policies and her political decision, what was her
She,
reaction?
she completely cut me off, but also she cut my mother off because my mother stood up publicly and opposed the emergency. My mother was completely cut off also at that time. Long afterwards, my mother, being of the old school and devoted to her brother, as she was, and she considered Indira Gandhi as her own daughter. So she
Yes.
never stopped going. She went even during the emergency to meet her. When she was defeated, she went to meet her. She kept it up. But I did not get restored until Rajiv came into power. And
Okay.
he was very, very fond of my mother since childhood. And he couldn't see her treated like that, you know. So, in fact, when she died, it was Rajiv who took care of all the rights.
So, coming to again to your books, actually, I'm still there with your last book, The Fate of Butterflies, because I can see the fate of every Indian in that book. That what is going to happen, what is going to be the future of this country, actually. So, you have seen the most difficult days of this country, and today can you suggest what could be the right path? What could be the political way out, actually? And do you really see the Congress party, which is run by again the same dynasty, are they capable to do something to make some changes in the politics of this time? Do you see Rahul or Priyanka?
You know,
Uh,
I don't know why the press does not understand that both Sonia and Rahul have absolutely given up the leadership. They have said we are not going to, continue. So please find a replacement. They have said that over and over again. I think it is 2 years since Rahul first said it. And Sonia Gandhi definitely. I think she did great work for the Congress. I have to admire her. She came to this country, a young girl who had never been to this country and hardly anywhere outside of her own home in Europe. But she adapted herself and she came to love India and to stand for what the Congress stood for. And it still took 7 years for her party to persuade her after Rajiv died to take the leadership. She was not willing to do it. She didn't want to do it. But in the end, she came and she certainly achieved great success in her leadership. Twice she led the party to power for two full terms. Those are not small achievements. But she did the other day, and Rahul has said the same thing. I think the party has to understand, as some of the younger members have understood, and 23 members have written a letter to Sonia, giving their views, giving their grievances. And I think I haven't read the letter, but maybe making suggestions as to how things could be improved and the party could be strengthened, which can happen. It certainly can happen. And if that happens, I do see a future.
but but many believes that without I mean beyond Gandhi family, it's not possible to steer Congress party to a success. So that's why there is a group of sycophants who always want it's Rahul, it's Sonia, Rahul or Priyanka. They don't see any alternative to them.
That is what can I say? It's so absurd. It's so absurd in this great country, and the Congress party has immense talent. I mean, one could reel off 10 or 12 names right away who could rise to the top and become leader. Of course, it can happen. They have to get down and have an election and elect a new president and a new leader and so on. It can be done. It's not impossible. They only have to do it. And then there will be some hope because no other party has the pan India name and reputation that the Congress had. And only the Congress can now get up and fight as a party and maybe as a leader of the opposition, which I think they do from time to time. Now they are doing it also, getting together in the virtual parliament. But it can be done on a proper scale and bring about a great change.
Okay, coming to the last leg of our discussion, I want to ask another couple of questions about, we are fighting a terrible political battle. Uh, we know that our institutions are in danger, and that's one part. Added to that, this pandemic had come, and this has completely ruined the life of poor people in this country. And we have seen millions of people walking on the road uh, without food, without having any future. How do you see this pandemic? Because you have seen war, you have seen the struggle for independence, you have seen famine, you have seen hunger in this country. But how do you see the pandemic of this day and its political ramifications, its political influence for
Yes,
future?
well, I see it, and many people see it as a horribly mishandled situation where we were locked up or locked out, whatever you call it, uh,
Lockdown. They say it's
at no lockdown, at no
yeah, they say
notice
it's
at all. You know, we were told one night you're locked down. Nobody had time to make arrangements, get in supplies, uh, go home if they were away from home. Nobody was given a chance, and the most horrible experience was that of the migrants. And I cannot get out of my mind the picture of those thousands of people, columns of people on foot, bearing every misery and suffering, starvation possible to get back home. And when they were told, if you do this, you will get the virus, then they said, well, if we don't do it, we will starve. You know, either way, we are going to die. So let us die at home. I don't think any of us have ever seen such a horrific situation after the partition until today. And
Yeah, sir.
the mismanagement has been a continuation of mismanagement, demonetization, and whatever followed without planning, without first planning and then taking a move. So the pandemic has been even worse than it would have been otherwise. And certainly, it is an unprecedented situation in this country. I don't know, none of us know how long it will go on. And I always wonder at these very cheerful programs where people say, "Oh, I'm having a nice time sitting at home. Oh, I'm having a lovely time doing this or that." How? I mean, how can they say that when we see what is going on to so many people? Where is the distancing in the juggies and jhopadis that are packed with people? It's an absurd situation.
Ma'am, you have seen many great leaders actually, starting from Stalin, Churchill, to Pandit Nehru, to
Stalin,
have you seen them? Okay.
no great leader. He was a horrible leader who under millions of Russians were killed. He
Yes,
sentenced
yes.
millions of his own people to death. And
Actually,
it's
I intend to ask you a question about the leadership. Actually, we have seen Stalin, we have seen Hitler, and we have seen great Democrats like Pandit Nehru or many great leaders. But
yeah,
my question is, despite suppose when we look into the leadership of Mr. Narendra Modi, he is doing a lot of things which is very tyrannical. He is doing his policies completely uh, tyrannical, and it's an assault on the life of people, assault on the life of democracy. Still, he is being loved by people. He is being uh, worshipped by people. How? It's a country of 1.3 billion. It's so dumb. How do you believe that we are so dumb that we are accepting his tyrannies, his anti-people policies as our own? How do we accept that? Or is there any positive side to his leadership?
no, I think we're in a very new world situation where fascism is spreading. We are, after all, there are dictatorships now in many countries, elected dictatorships, like Erdogan in Turkey, in other places, Bolivia, and several other countries. There are elected dictatorships. And in fact, there is a re rise of Nazism, even in
Yeah.
Germany, in East Germany, in Austria, in other places. It's a world phenomenon which I think is being duplicated over here. And so people are ignoring everything but depending on a leader, one leader who will lead them to glory. Glory and greatness is military power today. And so many countries are now in this direction all over the world. So not only India, which of course makes the situation far worse, far more difficult to come out of.
Okay, it's the military glory, but not the human glory. In the idea of India was that we wanted to create a democratic, human society, but neglecting those ideas, we are becoming more militarily glorious. Do you intend to say that we
Yeah,
are focusing more on? Are we becoming warmongers? That to hate your neighbors, to fight with your neighbors, is the biggest achievement for a country. Is it so?
Uh, yes, we are a long way from Mahatma Gandhi's idea of politics and economics, which he said should look for the benefit of the last and the least. You should judge economic policy, political policy, by how it benefits the last and the least. Now, we have gone a long way from that. We are not talking about a good society, a human society. We're talking about greatness. And greatness is defined by power and by wealth. Now, are we wealthy? They say, yes, we are. Look at the way our billionaires are growing. Our billionaires are certainly increasing. And so are the miserable who have no part in real growth. We have neglected health. We have neglected education. These are, you can call it socialism, is what the state is there for, to provide for these basic priorities so that human beings can live like human beings and not like animals. We have taken no care since little enough before, but yes, we were aspiring. We were going in the right direction. It was not enough, but we were in the right direction. Now it's all been turned around, and there used to be a saying, health is wealth. Do you remember that?
Yeah.
Now, I think now it should be wealth is health.
Okay.
That's it.
Wealth is right.
Yeah.
So it's I want to go on talking, but it's already close to 1 hour,
Yes.
and
Yes.
I don't want to uh, uh, ask you any more question, but it's no, I just want to tell you that I feel like I am sitting in front of history, uh, a person who has witnessed history for last 90 years, and you still look that young at this age. I believe I'm still talking to one of my contemporary writers, and that's a great feeling, man.
Thank
I can never have a feeling like this. I'm going back home with a feeling that I have talked to one of the greatest human being. A person who has seen history so closely and who is so human at his heart. Thank you very much for being a part of this conversation and making this evening so glorious, so proud. Thank you very much. And friends,
you.
it's a great evening to talk to Nayantara Sahgal ji, and it's a part of history. And many people, those who believe that who she was. Many young people wanted to know why she returned her award. I hope you must have got your answers. And you see, she is a part of our history. She is the captain of our time. She is the ideological fountainhead of our time. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Kalinga Literary Festival, for creating this platform. Thank you,
Thank you.
Rasmi, Tansu, and others. Any final word, ma'am, from you?
A final word.
Yes, I just
Well,
want a final.
may we come out of the situation which we are in today, inshallah.
Thank you very much. This is the last, this is the greatest word. Thank you very much, ma'am. Namaskar.
Namaskar. Namaskar.